Dear students, good morning to all of you. Now we are going to discuss history of soil fertility. History of soil fertility is very broad subject, as you know. It deals with several subjects, several areas, like organic matter is part of soil fertility. So history of organic matter itself is very large. Similarly, history of essential plant nutrients, their availability, sources, lot of workers, lot of research work was involved. See, even in case of essential plant nutrients, you know the history. First thing is that who discovered the elements. First thing is element, and then comes the essential elements or essential plant nutrients. So history is already there. Sources of nutrients, different fertilizer nutrients. There are 1,000 kind of fertilizer materials. They were developed by different people, and their use in soil, their release, and so much of history is there. Then coming to the lab related soil fertility, determination of total and available nutrient. There are 1,000 kind of methods to analyze the nutrients in soil, plant, water, fertilizer. So you can see the volume of history that can be there in soil fertility. Or I've already dealt with organic plant nutrition, inorganic plant nutrition, and then transformation of native and applied nutrients, how it happens, nutrient availability to plants, methodologies for estimation of available nutrients, study of interaction of nutrients, gain and losses of nutrients. You go on. Now new things are coming: soil quality, soil health, uh, soil resistance, soil sustainability. So much is there, even up to soil health card in India. This is also part of soil fertility. If you see in detail why these soil health card are issued, why we talk about it. So they are also part of, they will become part of history shortly. So area is very broad, and I would like to deal with most important breakthroughs in soil fertility. And I have a chapter, very good chapter on soil fertility, history of soil fertility, that I will try to share with you. Those who are interested can read the history of soil fertility from that chapter. That chapter is from Tisdale book. Tisdale book, now you have soil fertility and fertilizer, and it has got several editions. So in the say 8th or 6th edition, when I was a student, so I got a copy of that book. I have scanned it, or it is available. But now they are not writing that chapter. They are not including history of soil fertility in the current edition. But in the older edition, it was there. I will share that. Interested student can read the history of soil fertility. Now, as we know, in the history, we got certain dates: AD, BC, BCE. So what is the difference between AD and BC? Because history is related to dates and years, decades, centuries, millennia. So BCE, many times you will find written. So BCE means before common era. And you can write either BCE or BC. They have got the same meaning. Some people write BCE and some people write BC. So BC means before Christ. The meaning of before Christ is the previous to year 1 CE. The meaning is previous to year 1 CE, common era. This is the same as the AD1. So CE and AD1 is same. The letter means in the year of the Lord. Anno Domini, AD1, AD2, AD. Now we are in AD 2022. So the letter means in the year of Lord, often translated as in the year of our Lord. So this is how we see this BC and AD. Now, humans started practicing agriculture is really very old. If you know the human history, how they lived in jungles and how they have their initial days in the development of human race. So 10 to 12,000 years back, and the settlements started near the riverbeds. And riverbeds were, why they started settlements near the riverbeds? Because they were nutrient rich and they knew the value of nutrients even that time. Human interest in soil fertility, SF here means soil fertility, is importance in supporting crop production goes back to 5,000 to 5,500 years. See, the manuring as a part of sound crop husbandry in ancient India is mentioned in Vedas and Upanishads. So manuring is there in our Vedas and Upanishads, and there are certain proofs from Indian Valley civilization, which happened 3000 to 1300 BC, and Alexander the Great lived around 356 to 323 BC. So there are accounts in the West of soil fertility dating back to 2500 BC. Mentions have been made use of manures from animals, other sources, beneficial effect of legumes on the following crops known to Greeks, Indian, and Romans as early as 2500 BC. Manuring of vineyards mentioned during 900 to 700 BC. You don't bother about these dates. This is just to get some idea how this subject is started. So Greek philosopher Aristotle 384 to 322 BC, and his student Theophrastus 371 to 285 BC. No experiment done to test his ideas, but Aristotle was the philosopher. So he got some philosophy about soil fertility. Since plant grows from the soil, that their substance must come from the soil. Very early stage, he told that they are growing in soil and their substance must come from the soil. As many flavors as there are in the flesh of different fruits, so many, it is plain, prevail also in the earth. So very good idea that the flavors of the fruits are affected by soil, The meaning is that in different kind of soils, you will get different kind of fruit taste. So I mean here is that he said that quality of the fruits or vegetables or materials will be affected by the kind of soil. That is the meaning. Aristotle regarded the soil as equivalent to a vast stomach. So he treated soil as a stomach of the plants that prepares and supplied the food of the plant. I think he was right that it is a stomach. In a stomach, what happens? Digestion happens. And in soil, what happens? Digestion of organic matter happens to release the nutrient. If you are not adding them from outside, the nutrient may come from organic matter or minerals. So his ideas were really good. This view later became known as humus theory of the plant nutrition. That let the things, organic matter, go into the soil, broken into small pieces and taken up by plant. That is your humus theory. Proposed by Albrecht Thayer in 1809, beneficial use of plant or animal manures. Plants feed upon substances which are similar to them. Humus was regarded as the chief nutrient for plants taken up by roots and converted to plant material, did not recognize the elemental nature of nutrients. So by this theory, the humus will be directly taken up by the plant. Then certain contribution by Greek people and Indian people, Roman people, they are ancient people, you can consider them. Theophrastus advocated that thin soils be manure heavily but rich soils sparingly. Very good. It is the nutrient recommendation, rate of nutrient application, you can say. Thin soils means light kind of soils be manured heavily, but rich soils sparingly, here and there. Theophrastus, as also Virgil, were aware of the benefit of green manuring and growing of legumes for enriching the soils. Pliny, 62 to 113 AD, suggested soil should be limed, and effect of one application lasted for several years. Interesting results he gave. That liming means maybe acidic soils, and then it will last for several years. Good experience. Both Theophrastus and Pliny were familiar with saltpeter. Saltpeter is KNO3. Olive orchards and other gardens in Athens, Greece, were enriched by sewage. On those days, they were using sewage sold to the farmers in those days. So actually, Greek civilization was very advanced in the world. and they ruled the world for very long time. Not world, very this Alexander Fleming, oh, not Fleming, Alexander the Great, Sikandar, policy in 1563. When you bring dung into the field, it is to return to the soil something that has been taken away. So he was referring to the nutrient cycling. You have taken the nutrient, and dung, if you are returning, you are just giving it back. So ideas were there by the people, but they were not based upon science or scientific fact, or they were not based upon experimentation and documentation. And then beginning of the systematic investigation happened in the area of soil fertility and nutrient management. In 16th century, some degree of experimentation was conducted. So water was the principal nourishment for plant. So one by one, they came up with the theory, and theory means where from the plant is growing, what plant is getting to grow, where from plant is getting the food to grow. So some people said that it is just water, which is the food of the plant, principal nourishment. And then somebody, one Helmont, he said water was the sole plant nutrient. Okay, that is how science progresses. Then saltpeter, potassium nitrate was the principal. Principal here means the intrinsic part, the internal part of vegetation, and this was the major source of soil fertility. So some idea came from Glober and Mayo that okay, potassium nitrate is important. It is in the soil, and it is important part of the vegetation. Then terrestrial matter, earth, rather than water was the principle of vegetation. So Woodward said around 1700 AD. Terrestrial matter means earth or soil, rather than water was the principle of vegetation. He said that plant is deriving most of the things from soil. Plant roots actually ingested soil particle through openings in them, after which the soil particle entered the plant's circulatory system. So that was some rough idea, or very rough idea, but okay, that time science was not that much advanced. That is why he recommended tillage. Let us go and plow and break the clods and make the tilth fine so that that can be absorbed by the plant. A fallow field absorbs the fertilizing properties of the atmosphere. So this was really good achievement, and it is true also. Means when your rainfall occurs, it brings certain nitrates or certain nutrients to the soil. Views on soil fertility and crop nutrition started changing after Bossingard. Bossingard's contribution were important. And what he said, carbon in plants was derived from the air, and that soil provided only a small part of total plant food. Though this small part was indispensable, supplying nitrogen and the constituent contained in the ash. So this was based upon certain facts that, okay, carbon is coming from air, maybe CO2, and whatever plant is getting from the soil is indispensable. Plant cannot live or grow without this part. And this is made up of ash, because it's supplying nitrogen, and ash. Ash here means minerals. In contrast, Humphreys and Davy and Thayer, they said plants derive their carbon mostly from the soil, thus giving birth to the humus theory, which was later to be demolished by Justus van Liebig. Much of the thinking on soil fertility has come from Liebig, who wrote a paper, Chemistry in its Application to Agriculture and Physiology, and he presented before British Association in 1840. Liebig made the following statement. I think I already read these statements in some other class on principles of soil fertility. So what did he say? Most of the carbon in plant come from CO2 and of the air, while hydrogen, oxygen are derived from water. Phosphate are necessary for seed formation. Alkaline metals are needed for neutralization of acid. Plant absorb everything from the soil indiscriminately. but the roots release what the plant does not need. Plants absorb nitrogen as ammonium, which they obtain from the air, soil, or manures. So he was the first to say that these nutrients are taken up in ionic form, and nitrogen was taken as ammonium. Now, minimum, I need not to repeat it. I think I already covered it at some other place, but it is part of the history. So it was proposed in 1843 by Liebig. And this lies important in balanced fertilization. So you can go through this 2-3 slides I will share. But what is here is important is that there was some problem with the Liebig. He was blamed by many scientists that he has copied the law of minimum from Spengel. So Spengel or Spengel, he formulated this law much before Liebig. So this is a matter of fact that he copied the idea of Spengel. So you can see here, it is now recognized that another German, Karl Spengel, Sprengel Spengel, was the first to formulate the law of minimum in 1828. So this should not be law of minimum, should not be credited to Liebig, but it has been credited. Much before Liebig, he said, it is indisputable that when a plant needs 12 substances to develop, it will now grow if any of these, it will not grow if any of these is missing, and it will always grow poorly when one of these is not available in a sufficiently large amount as required by the nature of the plant. So this is actually law of minimum, initially proposed by Spengel in 1828. So it is therefore being suggested that this law should be more appropriately called as Spengel-Liebig law of the minimum. So in some textbook, now you will also find this law as Spengel-Liebig law of the minimum. And no penalty was given to Liebig for copying idea of Spengel. Establishment of long-term fertilizer experiment or field experiments in Rothamsted. I think they are the oldest long-term experiments. In 1843, started by Lewis and Gilbert. Next, oldest rotational experiment in Morrow plots. Morrow plots at Urbana, Illinois, USA. It started in 1879, Professor Morrow. So oldest extensive field experiment in Pennsylvania, 1882. In India, long-term manual experiment, Kanpur, 1885. So you can see these are all initiatives of soil fertility, maintenance or management of soil fertility. So all the history related to long-term field experiment is also history of soil fertility. So I got a chance to visit this Broadbach experiment. This is in Hertfordshire in near London. This is near London, and you can see that these people are keeping the archives of samples, plant samples as well as soil samples. Starting from 1843 up to now, every year they take samples of the soil as well as plant, and they have a storage where they store these archives, so that sometimes after 100 years, 200 years, whatever it may be, they can be used for research purpose. And then you can see this control plot in long-term experiment at Rothamsted. So this is the control plot of wheat where they have not applied any nitrogen. So basically they have three treatments. One is control, one is chemical fertilizer, and one is integrated nutrient management, INM, where organic manures and chemical fertilizers are combined. So this is, you can see here. Bossingalt further said that crop rotations with legumes removed more nitrogen than what was supplied through manures. So you can say it is giving some indication that some nitrogen may be coming from the legume. He was not sure, but he said that crop rotation with legumes removed more nitrogen than what was supplied through manures. So that means some nitrogen may have come additionally. So this was the idea, and then it was held Herrigel and Wilfarth, 1886, discovered that legumes do fix atmospheric nitrogen by certain bacteria living on roots. So they suggested that there may be some bacteria on the roots. The organism was later isolated by Beijerinck 1888 and named Bacillus radicicola, earlier name of rhizobium. So this Beijerinck has been very, very important microbiologist. In research, he isolated and named this rhizobium. Today we call rhizobium. Their earlier name was Bacillus radicicola. And Beijerinck also isolated nitrogen-fixing Azotobacter and Azospiller. So really his discovery was very great, you can say. Now coming to India in brief, what is soil fertility, history of soil fertility in India? So soil fertility as a discipline was born in 1882 under the umbrella of agricultural chemistry, when J.W. Leather, he was English person, was appointed as the first scientific staff of the then Imperial Department of Agriculture at Dehradun. So it started here. He was later moved to the Imperial Institute of Agricultural Research, Pusa, Bihar, IRI Pusa now, Bihar, as the Imperial Agricultural Chemist. In India, the early phases of soil fertility research have been documented by Randhawa and Tandon and Pratap Nair. There are classical documents published by ICR, Indian Council of Agricultural Research. So they have history of Indian agriculture in 4 volumes. Anybody interested can contact me. The soft copies of these are available with me. Based on the results of about 5,000 manual trials in India, reported by Vaidyanathan 1933, Burns concluded that Indian soils needed only nitrogen application that time. Another British expert, Stewart, disagreed and stated that the view that Indian soils do not need phosphate appears to be held to surprisingly and indeed dangerously large extent. Means Stewart said that it is not just nitrogen which is deficient in Indian soil, it is also phosphorus that should be added. So several of the following points he made are valid even today, Stewart. So what Stewart said, Indian soils are generally poor in nitrogen and different forms of nitrogen are nearly equally effective. Egyptian clover and wheat in parts of Punjab and crops in red sandy soils responded to phosphorus application. Laterite soil responded to K, potassium, but responses to K in the presence of adequate amount of other nutrients have not been studied. Trace element deficiencies may be fairly widespread. That time he called micronutrients as trace elements. When crop yields are increased, if you increase the crop yield, micronutrient deficiencies will come up. Soil test plant response correlation had not been adequately studied. In the early and mid 1950s, 2 developments played a role in soil fertility evaluation and determination of research-based fertilizer application rates. So these are deciding the fertilizer application rates, initiation of simple fertilizer trials, SFT, on farmers' field, and setting up of 24 soil testing labs with American assistance. The network of soil testing labs has expanded over the years to more than 1,000 labs at present. Anybody has idea that how many soil testing labs are there in India at the moment? Because these 1,000 labs were reported in 2013. Now we have 2022. So anybody got any idea about number of soil testing labs in India? Anybody? No idea. Number of sugar mills in India? How many sugar mills are there in India? Anybody, any idea?
Sir, by 2017, soil testing labs were above 1400 in number, and sugarcane mills around 580, I guess, in 2020 data I'm talking about.
Yeah, you may be right. You may be right. Just my point was that you should know it. Now it is up to you whether you want to know it or not. So, but these kind of things are important, dear student. These number game is also important for you. So, definitely you may be right. More than 1400 labs are there. Soil testing labs are there by 2017. And he also told about sugarcane mills over 538. Last time when I read it, it was 451. But definitely I read it many years back. So now there may be 538 sugarcane mills. And which state has largest number of sugarcane mills?
UP sir, Uttar Pradesh sir.
Correct. Which state? My simple question is that which is the most popular variety of sugarcane in northern India these days? Anybody knows? COS 0238. COS 0238. Almost 99% area of sugarcane in northern India has been occupied by this single variety for last 10-15 years. Can you imagine? One variety is ruling the whole sugar industry in northern India, 0238. So this is really so important variety. So you can see that how much valued this variety is. But this year, this variety suffered from red rot. Red rot of sugarcane, I got many complaints from the farmers, and it is very destructive disease. This red rot of sugarcane, there is no control for red rot of sugarcane. It is just like cancer in human beings. So no treatment for, once it has come, prevention is there. You can go for seed treatment and soil treatment, but before it comes, and once it is there inside the sugarcane, or once it is in the plant, then no medicine or no fungicide can control this disease. That is the problem. Anyway, we come back to fertility. The soil fertility trials, SFTs, soil fertility trials were initiated in 1953 as a follow-up action on the report by Stewart. So Stewart gave his report that now your soils may be getting deficient even in micronutrients, trace nutrient, you need to apply phosphorus. Therefore, trials were initiated, and these trials laid the foundation of the ICR's All India Coordinated Agronomic Research Project, now a part of ICR's IIFSR, this ACRI projects. This institute is generating multi-location information on INM and organic farming. This IIFSR. Soil fertility research in India expanded and became more diversified after the reorganization of ICR in 1965. Apart from ICARP, soil fertility research received further emphasis during the 1960s with the initiation of multi-location coordinated research project. Soil test, crop response studies, and coordinated project on micronutrients in soils and plants, which later included secondary nutrients, pollutants, elements. Dear students, if you are interested to learn more on long-term fertilizer experiment, it will not take more than half an hour or 1 hour to study it. What you can do, you can go to the website of Indian Institute of Soil Science, and on that website you will find All India Coordinated Fertilizer Experiments, long-term fertilizer experiment, and they have got a link for fertilizer experiments, and then you can get the information. What is the objective of the long-term fertilizer experiment, how they are being done, and what are their major results. And they give you fantastic information, good information. So because I believe that nobody has taught you long-term fertilizer experiments and their detail. They were established in 1971. in India. Initially, they started in 1885 at Kanpur, but after a certain period of time, they were discontinued. And they were freshly started in year 1971, and they are headquartered at Bhopal, Indian Institute of Soil Science. So for further detail, please go to the website. Those who are interested can see that, and in 1 hour, you can make your notes and things related to long-term fertilizer experiment. They are also important. Now, another major initiative was the initiation of a coordinated multi-location project on long-term fertilizer experiments in 1971. All these projects are continuing and have generated a tremendous amount of largely field-based information during last 5 decades. A significant contribution to our knowledge was also made. So you got recommendation from long-term fertilizer experiment. What are their major recommendations? You need to know it. And these recommendations are cropping system based, like maize wheat. Maize wheat system is there. There are some more system, number of systems are there, depending upon the regions of the country, and it covers whole India. Even in IRA, you will find these trials run by Department of Soil Science. They are running it on maize wheat system. They have treatment like NPK plus, they have treatment like control, then only nitrogen, only phosphorus, and then NP, and then NP plus K, NPK plus manures, and like that. There are many combination of treatments, and information is coming. So most of the experiment, long-term experiment in India suggest integrated nutrient management is the best strategy for soil health management, for plant health, as well as for economics. So INM is the best way. It has been proved by this. And also thrust should be given on balanced fertilization. Means you can add micronutrients whenever they are required. So what they suggest now, you can see long-term experiment, continuous application of only nitrogen is the least desired practice. Agronomic, economic, and so means it is better to not to apply nitrogen instead of applying nitrogen only. So applying nitrogen only is more dangerous than not applying it, because what happens, the soil will become infertile quickly because of proportionate uptake of P and K also. If you apply more of nitrogen, it encourages more uptake of phosphorus and potash also. So in the end, soil will be exhausted of P and K. So therefore, there will be sharp decline in the yields. But if you do not apply any nitrogen and grow plant continuously, at least you will get something, and your soil will not become that much exhaustive as when they happen in case of only nitrogen supply. In several cases, plots receiving continuous nitrogen application produced even lower crop yields than the unfertilized control. So this is important. And then you can see physical, chemical, and biological soil properties were most favored by a combined application of optimum fertilizer rates along with annual application of 10 to 15 tons per hectare. So moreover, if somebody asks you what are the major recommendation of long-term fertilizer application, so first recommendation, you can say that there has to be balanced fertilization. Only nitrogen should not be applied, or only P or K. All the nutrients should be applied in proportionate amount or recommended amount. And in addition to that, we should use some FYM also, this 10 to 15 tons per hectare of farmyard manure. So physical, chemical, biological soil properties were most favored by a combined application of optimum fertilizer rate plus annual application of 10 to 15 tons per hectare of FYM. Balanced fertilizer use augmented the liming in acid soils, sulfur in sulfur deficient soils, zinc in zinc deficient soils, and FYM in most cases was the most desirable practice in sustaining high crop yields and minimizing the depletion of soil fertility. So this is how I tried to teach you history of soil fertility in brief. So do you have any question on this?